See if you can guess the hidden meaning of the following stories. The answers will be in the description of the next Creepy Riddles video. Story 1. Psychic Readings.
There were two women in their 20s who were the best of friends. Since they were both single, they decided to take a holiday together. They booked flights to Germany and decided to visit the city of Dresden. On the first day of their holiday, the two women took a walk around Dresden's Altstadt, Old Town, to get acquainted with the city's history and visit all the familiar tourist spots. One of the women spoke German, so she's able to act as a translator for her friend, telling her the meaning of all the signs and place names. That evening, on their way back to their hotel, the women passed through Neustadt, Newtown. As they walked down the street, one of the women noticed an old cemetery nearby and asked her friend if they could go in for a few minutes and take a look around. The sign above the gates read in German, "Old Jewish Cemetery." The women went inside and strolled around the quiet and deserted grounds of the graveyard. They were reading through a few of the ancient gravestones when one in particular caught their eyes. The inscription on the headstone read, "Henriette Musbach, sentenced to death by the criminal court in 1776, beheaded for the murder of 11 women." As it was beginning to grow dark, the two young women continued on their way back to the hotel. They had only been walking for a few minutes when they happened to pass by a market. The stalls were lined up on a side street, with vendors at each one selling a variety of food, drink, clothes, and souvenirs. They also noticed a small tent that stood at the end of the alley. It was garishly decorated, and there was an ugly old lady standing outside. The sign above the entrance read, "Free Psychic Readings" in German. One of the young women was very interested in horoscopes, fortune-telling, and divining the future. She decided to take up the old lady on her offer of a free psychic reading, and was quickly ushered inside the tent. The other woman didn't speak any German, so she just waited outside and took a look at the products being sold at the other market stalls. After browsing through the wares for 10 minutes, she began to get impatient. After 20 minutes, she began wondering why her friend was taking so long. The woman brought some bratwurst, onion bread, and cheesecake at the market stalls. A quick glance at her watch told her that her friend had already been in the fortune-teller's tent for 45 minutes. Bored and eager to return to the hotel, she decided to phone her friend and ask when the psychic session would be over. But when she called, there was no answer. When the woman approached the fortune-teller's tent, she looked down and saw a deep red liquid on the ground, running out through the tent flaps. She realized to her horror that it was blood. The woman was paralyzed with fear. As she stood there, a pool of blood spread out around her feet. She glanced over her shoulder and saw that all of the vendors at the other stalls were staring at her, with twisted grins on their faces. Terrified, she dropped everything she had bought and fled as fast as she could. She ran blindly through the streets, dashing this way and that, shoving people out of her way. She didn't know where she was going. She just wanted to get away from the horrible marketplace. Eventually, the woman came to a stop, completely exhausted. To her surprise, she found herself standing in the old Jewish cemetery again, looking at the gravestone in front of her. She was shocked to see the name Henriette Musbach. She couldn't understand German, but as she stared at the inscription on the gravestone, the blood froze in her veins. It read, "Henriette Musbach, sentenced to death by the criminal court in 1776, beheaded for the murder of 12 women."
Story 2. Repressed Memories.
A girl told her friend that she had a dark secret she had been hiding for years. Her parents had been murdered when she was 15 years old. She said that her older brother had gone insane and stabbed her mother and father to death. The friend was shocked at the terrible story she was hearing. "I'm so sorry," she said, comforting the girl. "What happened to your older brother after that?" "He was arrested by the police," said the girl. "There was a trial. I sat in the courtroom for weeks listening to the lawyers argue their case. Eventually, my brother was convicted of murder and sentenced to be executed." "That's horrible," said the friend. "Yes, it was," the girl replied. "He was on death row for a long time. Then he was executed by lethal injection." "It must have been so difficult for you," said the friend. "You wouldn't believe how hard it was," said the girl. "I went through life in a daze. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I tried to block out the terrible memories. I suffered from depression, anxiety, even amnesia. It took me years and years to recover." "Have you ever talked to anyone about this before?" asked her friend. "No, never," replied the girl. "I have so many questions, but they'll never be answered now. I was present at my older brother's execution, but he never said a word. He never explained why he killed our parents. He just stared silently at me as they gave him the lethal injection." "There's still a way you could get some answers," said her friend. "I don't know if you'd be interested, but I know a woman who is a psychic. She can communicate with the dead. She's very good. Maybe she could help you find the answers you're looking for." A few days later, the girl arranged to meet the psychic and consulted her about her past. The psychic turned down the lights, lit some candles, and sat down in her chair. Then, she tossed back her head and went into a deep trance. A few minutes passed and the girl sat in silence. "Now, you may ask me any question you wish," whispered the psychic. "What caused my older brother to lose his mind?" asked the girl nervously. "Your brother was never crazy," replied the psychic quietly. "He was always perfectly sane." "Then why did my older brother kill my parents?" asked the girl. "Your brother was only responsible for the death of one person," said the psychic. Suddenly, the girl understood everything. She buried her face in her hands and began crying uncontrollably.